Well, a new report out this week shows fewer Michigan schools are making the grade. In the 2009-2010 school year, about 14% of our state's public schools failed to meet adequate yearly progress standards under the No Child Left Behind law. In the 2010-2011 school year, that number jumped to 21%, or about 1 out of every 5 public schools. Higher education's expectations on standardized tests contributed to this rise, and State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mike Flanagan, expects the percentage of schools not making adequate yearly progress will continue to rise next year as Michigan increases its testing standards. Schools that repeatedly fail to make adequate yearly progress, or AYP, face sanctions. The state says 93% of its school districts make AYP overall this year, and some districts in our area not making the grade include Detroit, Highland Park, Jackson, Pontiac, and Ypsilanti. So what does this report really mean for local schools? Joining us now on the phone right now is Robert Livernois, the superintendent of Warren Consolidated Schools. Good morning, Superintendent. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So far, where is your school district stacking up in terms of AYP?
At certain levels in our district, our schools continue to do very well in making adequate yearly progress. But what I think is very important is everyone understand the structure of how AYP is measured and created and the original intent of it. It's a critical thing for people to understand that adequate yearly progress is an annual measurement of how kids are doing against a particular test. And it's very challenging for schools to prepare for that test when it has continually changed over time. So I would caution you, the viewers, to pay close attention to what it's exactly measuring from year to year, because it is not a comparative measure year to year.
Are your schools on track for making AYP?
Yeah, most of our schools are. We face the same challenge that many of schools in Michigan have with respect to certain subgroups of students must also make AYP. It could be students who are economically disadvantaged. It could be students who are second language learners of English, etc. And the challenge is any one of those groups, if they do not make AYP, the entire school does not make AYP, which many of us in the business feel is not an accurate reflection of the school. Although it is as important that every kid make adequate yearly progress, it can be a very misleading measure for your average person reading it in the paper as to why a school did not make that progress, when in fact it's only a particular subgroup of students.
Now, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit, because you have laid out some of the many cons, you know, teachers teaching to the test, or it's not fair because you can have a good graduation rate, but yet you can still have, you know, special education population bringing down the AYP. Now, but as far as pros go, they say this is really the way to make those students who have been left behind brought back in, as you know, the poor, the minorities, the special education students, the immigrants. It's also uniform goals are a good way to measure everything. The test is a more reliable tool of measurement. Teachers are required to be retrained or certified. There's more federal funding available now, so there are a lot of pros to it. Do you think this law should be tweaked, though?
Absolutely, and your point about the pros of the test, make no mistake, we all collectively believe that all kids should have high expectations for learning. It is the business of what we do. It's ironic, though, that you say about which children are being left behind, because if you dig into the law currently, if a school does not make AYP, certain sanctions are put in place. There's been the threat of schools losing funding for not making AYP, and also the idea that students who are in a school that hasn't made AYP can pick up and move somewhere else. So what it has created in our education system is those families that have the mobility to go somewhere else often do that. And what it has done is actually left more children behind in the districts who do not have the mobility to go somewhere else. So it's a very difficult scenario to understand when you hear a buzzword like "No Child Left Behind."
It's complicated, certainly. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there right now because we're out of time. But Robert Livernois, the superintendent of Warren Consolidated Schools, thank you so much for joining us on the phone to talk about this complex issue today.
Yep, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.